Hello and welcome to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney, and you have found the place where we talk about estate planning, elder law, real estate, and what's that other thing? Business law. That's right, business law. You know, this pandemic wiped out old folks in nursing homes. I mean, that's who it went to. I've even heard some commercials now where they're admitting that, but the government commercial, the PSAs, public service announcements, urging you to get vaccinated. And it's like, oh, what did 90% over 50 have in common? Well, they were over 50. That's 90% of 90% of COVID deaths were over 50. But something, if you crank it to 60 or even 70, you're still talking in the high 80s. Okay. The people really at risk for this, which is why it's so freaking unconscionable what they did in terms of the lockdowns and what have you. And in New York and Michigan, restricted people to the nursing home like that, or made them take infected people, even though they weren't ready for it. Those are the folks who died. Think about that the next time you're being told that these people know what the hell they're doing. Give me a break. You want to take that one with a salt shaker. You know what I mean? And I get it. I mean, I've listened to enough preachers and medical people. Oh, you're a bad person if you don't do what the government told you what to do. And then it turns out that number one, they didn't know what the hell they were talking about. They were just flailing around, which I get. See, I'm very sympathetic to them. Goodness, I spent 2 months in the basement, so I wouldn't, because I was still going out and about, and everyone, and I get 87-year-old mother-in-law, right, living in the house, get her out of her public housing, not public housing, but the senior apartments where she was living, living with us. I willingly did that. I look back on it and I think, well, that was a waste of time. But at the point at that time, you didn't know, so we were willing to do what it took, right? Remember that? But what? So I'm not saying that everybody knew immediately what was going on, but it was the hectoring tone. It was the mama knows best. Big sis is going to tell you what the truth is, right? And you are not just mistaken, you're wrong. You're an evil person if you don't do what we say. That's what I'm objecting to, because now in hindsight, we see that so much of it wasn't true. And then as the situation developed, right? And if you read my stuff in the newspapers or if listen to the show, I mean, I've been using CDC numbers right along. I don't repeat what I hear on the interwebs. I don't even, well, I should say CDC is on the interwebs. That's where I get the information. But it's from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is where I get my data. The official government numbers showed that who was at risk and who was not. So this shutting down the schools and stuff, just absolutely, maybe if you didn't know what was going on, but once you did, right? It's just, I don't know. It's just so much of that. And now, and why am I dredging up the past, right? I mean, it's so long ago. What, a year, 2 years? We're still under a medical emergency, I mean, and California just renewed theirs. I mean, it's tough to get a politician to give up power once they've got it. I guess I think that's a evergreen observation, is it not? So what are you going to do about it? See, this is always my thing. And we're looking now at rampant inflation. Here's the thing. If you were a kid, think about your kids, right? And I mean like 30s and 40s and 20s, 30s, 40s, like, kids. Well, they've had to put up with a lot of stuff that you had to put up with, right? Inflation. Yep, they had to put up with that. Recession. Yep, they had to put up with that. Expenses of higher education. Yep, they had to put up with that. So they put up with a lot of the same things that you have had to put up with. But there was one thing that until just now, really just now, they didn't have to deal with, that you did. You know what it is? Jimmy Carter type interest rates. Right? They didn't have to deal with 20%. The interest rates were so low. The money was basically free. This is what fueled all the housing bubble that we're in right now, is when the earlier this year, in January, February, when the interest rates were under 2%, right? Under 2%. Did I say that? Under 2%. Very, very low home mortgage interest rates. Okay. Well, the interest rates are that cheap. Why wouldn't you buy right now? And who needs an inspection anyway? And that's what bid up the prices of housing. That's why real families who really want to buy their house couldn't do it, because the investors were squeezing them out. Wall Street squeezing them out. Okay. So, and now the circle has come. We've come full circle. Oh boy. Now your kids, now the younger generation gets to experience high interest rates. I was just looking at the Freddie Mac, again, government numbers. I'm not making this stuff up. Freddie Mac, it's the Federal Home Loan Bank Board. They're saying that home mortgage interest rates are 6-7% now. 7%. In how long? 6 months. What is going on? Well, natural causes, natural things don't move that quickly. All right. They move kind of slow, unless it's a volcano or an earthquake or a tsunami or a hurricane even. Those things move pretty quick. But when you're talking about people's behavior and economies and whatnot, it's almost always government action that gets you the crazy stuff that's going on. Well, if you dump 2.5 trillion, and they're talking about more of debt into the economy, of manufactured cash, and that's what they did. You remember this? The first big bill that they had was $1 trillion. I said $1 million. $1 million. Well, it's not so much anymore, is it? Anyway, $1.5 trillion with the TR trillion 5. And then they followed it up. They wanted to do another couple trillion, but they only got what? 750 million. Thank you, Joe Manchin. All right. That's where we're at. I mean, you can't dump that much money with nothing to back it up, right? No more extra goods and services. This is just straight. Oh, and don't get me started on the student loans and all the rest of the stuff that they've been doing. Okay. But I mean, just the two big ones and just the headline numbers. And you know that the headline numbers are never really the numbers. So if they're saying they're spending $1.5 trillion, I almost said million again, $1.5 trillion, and then another 750 billion, which gets us to what? What is $225 trillion? It's closer to 3 or 4 trillion. It is, because they just lying their asses off. It, right? And so if you're wondering, why does your Raisin Bran cost 30% more or 20% more? Why is the producer price index up almost 20%, right? And more than 20%, depending on what you look at it. And now that we got a cold snap coming, apparently there's a Canada. Thank you, Canada. Going to be sending us some cold weather here. All right. Oh, and by the way, we've drained the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Oh, and by the way, we sold a bunch of it to China. What? You can't make this stuff up. You couldn't even imagine it. And then what else we got going on? Oh yeah, and we won't drill, and we won't. It canceled all the oil, not all the oil leases, but millions and millions of oil leases got thousands covering millions of acres got canceled. Right, did that early on. Canceled the pipeline. So now, when it gets chilly this winter, and you think, jeepers, wouldn't it be nice to get some of that Canadian crude that they were selling us for cheap? The answer is, or some of that fracking goodness, with the natural gas that brought down the greenhouse gases and was so good for the environment and all that. When it comes time for that, not so much. Oh, by the way, and now you can listen to your kids piss and moan, not only about every other bad thing that you've already gone through, but now the one thing that they didn't have to go through, that they're going through now, which is high interest rates. And I don't mean high interest rates on credit cards. Those have always been, 26, 27%. I'm talking about home mortgage interest rates that have gone from under 2% to what, I'll double check. I'll get the exact number for you, but it's right around 7% now, according to Freddie Mac anyway. So that's the brave new world that we got, that we're living in. So what are we going to do about it? That's the question. Well, America has always found a way to right the ship of state, right? We've always figured out a way. Voting is important. Don't forget to vote. If you like this stuff, if you like it, vote for it. If you don't like it, don't vote for it. Vote the other way. It's up to you. I'm agnostic. Not really. Anyway, so vote the way you think is the best thing. If you've got a whole bunch of student loans and you think that, jacking that onto grandkids and the working class, you went to college and now it's, the plumber should pay for it. You know how to vote. You've been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney, and we'll be right back with what to do next. Welcome back to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. And it's fight song weekend there, huh? Notre Dame finally got 3 in a row. What do you know? They were supposed to get a bunch more than that, but hey, I guess we'll take what we can get. Better than the alternative, right? So anyway, what do you do about this? I mean, you look around, you think this world is a ball of confusion, right? I mean, it's kind of a mess, right? And now we got the Russians. We're worried about Russian atomic bombs again, right? Worried about you name it, and closer to home, it's more difficult. Now, I've always been one to kind of counsel the younger generation to do what you and I did, which is kind of work your way through it. I do think that it's getting more difficult to do that. I am concerned that that the tools that were available to us are not available. Now, this is not an overnight thing. This has been developing for quite a while. If you look at the cost of higher education, if you look at and now interest rates, right? At least for some folks, they managed to muddle through there with the low interest rates. Well, that was something. Borrowing money, yeah, that's great. Low home mortgage interest rates. At least you were buying an asset, but now that way is shut as well. So what are we going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? This is where not throwing your money away. If you're older, if you got kids, if you got anybody you're worried about, really, in the next generation, that's where this estate planning now becomes front and center. It seems like to me. Yeah. I always opposed people spending themselves broke to get a government program that they already paid for. You don't have to go broke to get Social Security. That's ridiculous. Paid in. Why shouldn't you get out? Seems obvious. You don't have to go broke if you need a bypass or a knee or you break your hip. It's not like, oh, I'm sorry. Let me see your bank book. Oh, you got more than $2,000. I'm sorry. We're not paying for you. Come back and see us when you're broke. Oh, and then we're going to audit you for 5 years and decide whether or not we're going to pay for your broken hip. What? They don't do that. They do with Medicaid. They do with long-term care, right? So your income, they recognize the principle. You paid in, you should get a benefit out. There's nothing the matter with that. With basic health care, again, the Medicare, Medicaid thing, these Medicare Advantage plans, you want to be taking a look at some of those. Those are coming up, the re-enrollment period, right? So you want to be looking at those. Again, your health care, right? Again, they don't say, oh, you got to be broke first, but they do with long-term care. And that's where planning ahead really pays dividends. If you have a question about any of this, it's easy to get hold of us. Just give us a call right now. Area code 616-774-2424, 616-774-2424, 616-774-2424. You can always drop me an email. Love to get the emails. David@davidcarrierlaw.com. David@davidcarrier. See how easy is that, right? David@davidcarrierlaw.com. It's pretty easy. Or go to the website, davidcarrierlaw.com, and you can get information. You can even leave us a note on the website if you want to. That's up to you. But if you want to if you're like, I wish you would stop talking about all this stuff, get down to the nitty von gritty, right? If you want me to do that, well, it's easy to make me do it. Just call 774-2424. But seriously, I mean, I do think that See, our parents left us in America that worked well enough that you could work it. Do you see what I mean? I mean, you could do, if you did the right things, then it'd be okay, right? It would be okay. I mean, you worked and you could get your, you could get stuff in line. I have 8 siblings. There's 8 of us. I don't have 8 siblings. I have 7 siblings, but there's 8 of us all together, right? And we all did the same sorts of things, whether it was a scholarship to a private school, like myself, one of my brothers went to Cornell, all scholarship type stuff. Mine was an Army scholarship. Thank you, American taxpayers. Or state school or what have you, or just work your way through. You could do that then. I mean, you could make a meaningful contribution. And then when you got out, I mean, I was paying 9.5, I think. It was like 9.5 was the interest rate, but it was a $50,000 place. You know what I mean? And it was reasonable and that was in Washington, when I was in the JAG Corps at, in Alexandria, at the, I worked in an agency first and then at the Pentagon. So anyway, long story short, the opportunities that used to exist aren't there anymore. And while first and foremost in planning, we have to worry about you, we have to worry about your spouse. Yeah, first, that never changes. But at the same time, when you're looking at the way things are going, and now the interest rates are skyrocketed, holy cow. I mean, where do you turn? If you're 30 years old and you want to start a family, what the heck do you do? Well, the answer is you start the family, okay? Because you'll figure a way. You always do, right? The world needs babies. The world needs kids. And if you want them, go get them. That's what I say. 20s, 30s. You'll find a way. You always do, okay? On the other hand, if as a parent, that you don't have kids, if you're that older generation, if there's some way not to give the government back all the money that you already paid them for, right? And this is the long-term care thing. This is what makes people broke. People don't go broke because of broken hips. People don't go broke because they need a bypass, right? People don't go broke because they need an eye operation or any of that stuff. That's not what makes people broke. What makes people broke is long-term care. And it's just getting worse. You can see it now. Talk about inflation. Look at what's going on with the expenses in long-term care. It is insane, the expenses. And my sympathy, frankly, is with the long-term care service operators. We just had this at a senior expo and the walk to end Alzheimer's and stuff like that. You're talking to the people who are running the services to provide for people at home or in long-term care. They are between a rock and a hard place. It is not. People are like, how could it cost $15,000 for a month in a nursing home? Well, start adding up the costs. They add up very, very quickly. Very quickly. And there go your life savings. And now you're stuck 3 square meals and 3 roommates, right? 3 hots and a cot. That's what you get. Well, if you kept your life savings intact, now you can buy the extras. That's the point. And there will be leftovers to give that step stool, whatever you want to call it, give some help to that next generation because they need it. They need it in ways you and I never did. I'm not saying we had it easy. I'm not saying that at all. But there was a sense that it was just the world. You know what I mean? It wasn't like they actively went out and said, okay, we're going to make it more expensive for you to drive and get the job, right? We're going to raise the interest rates on everything that you need. We're going to inflate the hell out of the thing, right? We're going to, all these things that they're doing, conscious government policies, which are having well-recognized, no surprise consequences, right? That are wrecking the middle class, wrecking the small businesses that are 99. I saw the statistic the other day. I don't know how accurate it is. It was like 99.9% of businesses are small businesses. Well, I believe that simply because there's so many of them. You got 330, 340 million Americans, so, living the American dream, a lot of them. So the big companies are percentage-wise few, but still a lot of them. So that's all I'm saying now. I'm just saying, I think it's more important than ever. If you want to win, there's things you got to do. Simple as that. If you want to know what you have to do, I'll be talking about that next. I'll give you some examples. We've got some letters to deal with. If you have a question, 616-774-2424. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Welcome back to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Now's the time to call 616-774-2424. 616-774-2424. We are live on Wood and WKZO. And it's not a long distance from Kalamazoo, you know that. Anyway, so give us a shout. Why don't you? We'd love to get your question, comment, or concern on the air. We deal with wills, trusts, and probate, elder law, which means Medicaid and long-term care, and how do you not go broke, and how do you do asset protection, that kind of thing. We also do with real estate and business law. Businesses, I don't have to tell you, if you're running a small business, you're under enormous strain, unprecedented. I mean, during the pandemic, unprecedented type strain. And that's what you're under right now. Is there a way out? You betcha there is. Give us a call, 616-774-2424. And let's see if we can work through that. We do have some emails. Love to get emails. David@davidcarrierlaw.com is how you can send us an email. But sometimes, fact patterns, those get interesting. I can yakety yak for a long time. Faithful listeners know that. But let's get some of the real life situations. All right. How about this one? Can I walk away from my mom's business and home without doing anything once she dies? Mom and I live together. Mom has become increasingly irresponsible. Shame on you, Mom. With money. She is super intelligent and has no dementia. She's 86 years old. Hey, listen, 86 is not the finish line, my friends. I mean, if you're thinking, hey, I'm 86, I don't have to worry about it anymore. The largest growing age cohort in America is over 100, percentage-wise. Over 100. So if you made it to 86 and you're super intelligent and you have no dementia, you're going to be seeing 96. So don't be playing the short-term game, I'll be dead by the end of the week. You probably won't be. Anyway, she gets lots of loans and has taken all her money from a reverse mortgage on her house. Well, the reverse mortgage is not a bad idea. At least now they're not going to take the house away from you, right? She won't listen to reason. Well, I hear that quite a bit. She is secretive about her finances and is controlling. Well, how'd you find out about this? You pilfering the mail? Is that it? Anyway, I believe she gets these loans knowing she will probably die before she has to pay them all back. Well, hello, America, right? Isn't that exactly what our current chief magistrate is doing? Think Joe Biden thinks he'll ever see the consequences of borrowing $2 trillion, $3 trillion. Then I want to add another trillion with this student loan giveaway thing. Are you kidding me? Unbelievable. I believe she gets these loans knowing she will probably die if she has to pay them back. I don't even know how I would be able to unwind any of this to even pay the debts off after trying to sell her business. I'm considering just walking away and not doing a thing after she dies, as long as I could do this without any legal ramifications for myself. Okay, so here's the danger thing, right? It says you're living together, so I'm guessing that means you're living in mom's house. You need to be, I would suggest, you need to be, working on your exit plan, okay, on your escape hatch, whatever you may say. Once mom passes, you've got, I think it's 6 months to sell the house. And I believe it's 95% of fair market value is what you have to sell it for. So, to reimburse the reverse mortgage. The reverse mortgage the reverse mortgage just come in, they'll foreclose and they'll take the thing. But generally speaking, when you're involved in a transaction and you're making it easier, right? When you've got a family member who's making it easier for the creditors and everybody else, at least you can get compensated for that. So the whole idea of walking away is not one that I'm, oh yeah, definitely do that. But you have to think about it. I think it's very good that you are considering it. You would be walking away as far as liability goes for mom's obligations. Those are mom's obligations, assuming, please God, that you didn't guarantee any of them. I don't believe you did. I'm not from this email anyway. So if that's what so mom's loading up on the debt, right? This whole thing's going to come crashing down. Probably, I mean, it would probably be horrifying to look at her credit card debt. You know what I mean? Because she's probably got 30% interest rates on those things. So, can you walk away? The answer is yes, probably. Nowadays, and this is something that's very, I think it was National Public Radio recently had a show on this about how the nursing homes and their attorneys, primarily, of course, are going after friends, family members, any pocket they can find, right, to squeeze a few more dollars out. Now, I believe the state they were focusing on was Massachusetts, which is, I'm also licensed to practice there. Massachusetts is different than Michigan. In fact, Massachusetts, when it comes to the whole long-term care thing, they're more like the rest of the country. So over 40 states, 43 states, will put a Medicaid mortgage on your house. They'll put a lien on your house. So even if you don't have a reverse mortgage, see, here's the thing. If you're going to long-term care in Massachusetts, yeah, might as well take out the reverse mortgage because the state's going to get anything that's left because they're going to put a lien on your house. They are. Maybe you like that, maybe you don't, but that's what they're going to do. So getting the reverse mortgage, different set of criteria. You got to look at it differently. In Michigan, they only come after assets that go through probate. Okay, so it's different. It is different. Now, the other thing that they're doing, the other thing that the long-term care facilities creditors are doing, as I said, is they're going after family and friends. So if there's any way that they could say that you received value from mom, you don't want mom making you big gifts or something, they'll track it, they'll trace it, and they'll come after you. Okay? You got to be, and this is something where, yeah, you had nursing homes doing it, but it wasn't that big a deal. It was sort of look what they're doing there. And now it's just kind of routine. And it's called law of fraudulent transfer. The idea is if you gave away stuff, right, in such a way that now you owe money and you can't pay it, but you could have paid it before, now they're coming after the person who got your stuff. Are you with me on this? So if you have $100,000 and you give it away to a kid, and now the nursing home's not getting paid, not only will they sue you, they'll go after the kid. This is why it's so important. It's not just a matter of, oh, I got rid of my stuff. Oh, Medicaid will pay. No, they won't pay. You've got to comply. You've got to do exactly what they tell you to do every step along the way so that you don't ever have an unpaid bill. See? Some people think this long-term care planning, this Medicaid planning, they think it's all about, oh, I'm going to stiff this one or that one. No, the last thing in the world you want to do is stiff anybody. You want everybody to get paid, but we want the program you already paid for to pay them. Why should you have to pay twice? It makes no sense to me. Okay, but that's it. We want them paid. We want long-term care. We want caregivers. We want everybody to get paid. And that way they don't come after your family. They don't come after your friends because they're already taken care of. In a situation like this, and we'll be breaking very shortly, but so I'll go back to some of the things that you need to do kind of immediately. Start distancing yourself, starting putting some protection in place for you as the kid. All right. You've been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Welcome back to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. The question is, how do you avoid, when the proverbial stuff hits the fan? Where were you standing when the hit the fan? Well, when mom passes, it's going to hit the fan, right? I mean, there's going to be creditors screaming. This is a situation, email where Sonny Boy is living with, I'm guessing it's Sonny Boy, could be daughter for that matter. they're not really specific about it, but I don't know. For some reason, it impresses me as a guy. Anyway, long story short, mom is loading up on debt. She's 86 years old, super intelligent, no dementia, living at home, running a business, and absolutely borrowing every nickel she can lay her hands on. She's very controlling, secretive, et cetera, et cetera. So, what's the idea here? Is she planning to go out on a bang, with a tar pit full of debt? Well, it certainly looks that way. And then the question is, what can the concerned family member, what can the loved one, what can the son or daughter, what can they do about it? Well, first and foremost, you don't want to get hit with the liability. So if mom needs long-term care, if any kind of business dealing you would not do with this person, I mean, you wouldn't do it with anybody else either. Why would you do it just because it's your mom? The answer is you would not. Then secondly, you've got to be very careful about what you accept from her. Oh, here you go, honey, I'll pay your mortgage, or I'll take care of the taxes, or the kids' college, or something like that. You need to be really on your guard, because if mom goes out with a bang, stiffing the creditors, and that's one of the things that our letter writer is concerned about. Mom does not plan to pay any of this back. Mom plans to, what's the eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may die. I mean, Shakespeare, right? So that's the way mom's playing this game. And the question is, how do we not be caught in that? Now, I will tell you, so number one, don't accept gifts. Number two, don't sign anything for mom. All right. And if mom does need long-term care and you're the one who's there for her, signing her in, for example, then you need to be very, very careful about what it is you sign at the facility. All kinds of folks over the years have found out that they've signed a personal guarantee to get mom admitted. They never intended to. It doesn't matter. You signed it with all those other papers that you signed, and now they're coming after the house, the money, and this is a growing trend. And it's not just if you agreed to it. If you receive any kind of benefit, right, then the law of fraudulent transfer, fraudulent conveyance, that kicks in. And if the bills aren't paid, they're coming after you. If you received a benefit from mom, right, for property that if mom still had, she would be able to use that to pay the bill. Now, I'm all about protecting the assets in a way that the facility, the caregiver, whoever it is, gets paid, right? This is not, I do not counsel, and I've seen it. There are some, obviously I'm not the only person advising folks on this, but there are folks out there where the plan is more to, what do you want to say, leave the facility high and dry. Okay, there's all kinds of ways that you can bollocks up the system, okay, so that some of it gets paid. And then I had a long conversation one time with one of the assistant attorney generals who goes after this stuff, and the things that people are pulling out there, and they're professionals, basically, unbelievable. Well, I've always been in this for the long haul. It's 32 years now. Soon it'll be, 33, a couple of months here, right? And the idea was, if we do it correctly, if we do it right, if we acknowledge we already paid for this, and I'm just trying to get, it's like making a claim on Social Security or Medicare or something, it's got to be done correctly. But if it is done correctly and you already paid for it, well, everybody's happy. I kicked in. I'm getting some of what I kicked in back to pay for the things that I need, like Medicare, just like Social Security. Okay. That's what this is about. It's about making sure everybody gets paid. We fully comply. All right. But you have to be careful. You have to do your bit. And when mom is going off the track here, right, and loading up on debt that she doesn't intend to pay, you got to make sure that you don't get tarred with that brush, so to speak. Okay. Now, that said, so you haven't taken any benefit, right? Any undocumented benefit. from mom. And let's face it, any benefit you receive would be documented, even if you intended not to. There's a record of it somewhere. So you've done that already, all right? You've protected yourself. Now the question is, what happens when mom passes? Should you just walk away? And that's the question. Can you walk away? The answer is yeah, you can. You can just leave it to the creditors and let them sort it out. But I wouldn't advise that. I don't think that's the first crack you take at it, because administrative expenses, right? Sorting out the wreckage, right? If you're involved in sorting it out, well, there's two advantages to that. Number one, you can actually get compensated for it. Administrative expenses have the first claim on estate assets, even beyond those of creditors, not secured creditors, but so if someone has a mortgage or security interest, they come first. But if there are any assets left, then by administering it, you'd be entitled to compensation for the work that you did. It's not a big windfall. You have to work for it. Okay. But there's that. Then there's the kind of the psychic satisfaction, if you will, of knowing that mom's affairs were not just, left on the side of the road or something, that you took care of it, that things got done correctly. There's a satisfaction that comes from that. And then finally, and this I think is most important, especially for the family members, when you're involved in making sure that things are done correctly, all right, you're part of the solution. You're not part of the problem, right? And if you're part of the solution, then it's much less likely, vanishingly small, that you're going to get tagged with liability. But if you're not there, if nobody understands what your role was, and you don't have any control over the situation because you just walked away, as it says, you just walked away, well, it's easier to blame the empty seat at the table. It's easier to get scapegoated if you're not involved. Right? So, number one, this is why I would say don't just walk away. Right? Mom, while mom's alive, she's going to do what she's going to do, apparently. Right? Not much you can do about it. But just make sure that you are not participating in it by taking unusual gifts or by signing any documents on mom's behalf. Okay, so protect yourself. That's number one. Then number two is, after she passes, are you going to help out with the administration? I think that's a good idea. Because number one, you don't want to leave a huge mess like this. That's bad karma, if you will, or whatever you believe in. It's the books don't balance if you do that kind of thing, and you can help out. Number two, you can get compensated. And if you're helping out, you can get, number one, it's just, or maybe A, it's a good idea. B, you get compensated for it. And C, you don't get blamed because you weren't there. That's the idea. You've been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Hello and welcome to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney, and you have found the place where we talk about estate planning, elder law, real estate, and business law. Easy to get a hold of us. Just give us a call, 616-774-2424. That's 616-774-2424. We'll get your question, comment, or concern on the air. You can also drop me an email. If you don't want to call, 616-774-2424. You can also just drop me an email, David at davidcarrierlaw.com, or go to the website. Very easy to do. Just want to point out that that for the last 10 years anyway, interest rates have been crazy low. I don't know if you've noticed that, but they have been. Like, I never understood it. I confess that since 2008, so that's a long time, about 14 years, whatever it is. I've always thought that the interest rates had to come up. And I never understood how could they stay so low. Well, the answer is, when the federal government is the lender of last resort and is keeping the interest rates from borrowing from the federal government very low, creates a lot of money. That creates money when they will loan for very cheap. In fact, one of the problems we had with funding our trusts was if you go to the bank and you say, hey, if you don't help us out here, if you don't play ball, let us do the trusts, right? Which you should do. There's no legal reason why it's just your policy, whatever. Or my client's going to have to take their business elsewhere, and they've got a lot of money, $1 million or whatever, at your bank. We're going to have to move it to a bank that recognizes the legality of doing the trusts. Yeah, go ahead. That was the reaction. It was like very blasé. Like I would have thought, we don't want to lose an important customer. That's not how they felt about it, because they were financing their business through borrowing from the federal government because it was so cheap. Well, that ship has sailed, right? I mean, it's taken a long, long time. And now your kids can experience everything you experienced. Back in the day, of course, you had concerns with inflation. Well, they got inflation, Jimmy Carter type inflation, terrible inflation. Say, well, tight job market. Well, we don't have that, do we? Right? People not wanting to work. That's a problem. Right? So if you're running a business, I guess that would be the problem. What other problems did you have that your kids didn't have to worry about? Well, they didn't. The one thing they didn't have to worry about were the interest rates. And now in just a few months, they've gone from around 2% to around 7%. That's 3.5 times. That's 350% increase. What are you supposed to do if you want to start a family and you want to buy a house and you need to borrow some money to do it? Holy cow. If that's not a difficulty, I don't know what is. I suggest it's a difficulty, right? And now finally your kids are, now every bad thing that happened to you is happening to them. Plus everything costs more, even the things that you counted on, like education and stuff like that, that's gone through the roof as well. And some of the things that they're doing is just going to ensure that as we go forward, and I'm talking about the student loan giveaway, where the plumber has to pay the lawyer for the lawyer going to law school. I mean, I'm just stunned that the Democrat, that a certain party that's supposed to be the party of the working man and woman, is the one that's pushing this, when all indications are it's going to be working class people who are paying the bill, right? I mean, if 13% went to college and 87% did, or 13% have these student loans, it's the 87% going to be paying for them. How did that get to be fair? And how about the people who paid off their student loans? I mean, it's wrong on so many levels that even if it worked like macroeconomically, you know what I mean? Even if the economics of the thing worked, which they don't, because it just means higher inflation for everybody. But even if they did work, it'd be a bad idea, because entering into a solemn obligation, I will pay you the money back. Now you want people getting the idea, well, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Forget about it. Really? For the thing that made them successful, for education? Think about how wrong it is on so many levels to be doing this. And all you've got is people, yeah. Anyway. So, brave new world we're in, and interest rates, as I've been predicting now for the last 10 or 15 years, the interest rates are finally coming up. I'm not happy to see it, but it does complete the picture. It does make sense. We got Mike on the line. Mike, how can we help today?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Oh, okay. Hey, a question came up about capital gains tax.
Okay.
From the sale of my now passed mother's property.
Okay.
3 lots, one with a home, 2 of them undeveloped.
Okay.
They are in a trust, and they're not in any of the 4 siblings' names.
All right, good.
Is there going to be any capital gains tax when the property does sell?
Well, here's the thing. In order to give you legal advice like that, I need to get paid. So put a quarter in the radio, and then I'll give you the answer. How about that? Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Now
I
here's
don't have a coin slot on my phone.
oh man. Well, anyway, here's the good news on that one. When your mom dies, the estate, the trust, the kids, whoever it is that takes the property after mom dies, gets what's called stepped up basis. What that means, basis is usually the cost, is what you bought the thing for. So if mom bought the house for 10 and it's worth 20, now you'd have to pay tax on, if mom sold it, she'd have to pay tax on the 10, right? The 10 of profit. So if right, that makes sense, doesn't it? Now,
Yeah.
because records are so bad, and they tried this back in the late 70s, they tried to say the kids are going to take it at whatever mom paid for the property. They tried to do that, and it was just a freaking nightmare. They had to repeal it because it was such a nightmare. So they don't do that anymore. What they say is, and this is the way it's been right along, they say is, okay, we know when mom died. We've got a death certificate on that. And that just happened fairly recently. So we know what the date was. We also know what the property, or we can figure out what the property was worth on the day that mom died, because that just happened. We don't know what mom paid for it back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, whenever. Okay. But we can figure this part out. So what we're going to say, and mom's taxable estate, all right, includes this property. That's the test. Would it be included for estate tax purposes? Now, here's the thing. Mom can pass on $12 million, $12.2 million worth of stuff without paying any estate tax. That's not the question. The question is not, will you pay the tax? The question is, would this property be considered for the tax? Okay. And if it would be, then we're going to give you a stepped up basis on it. This is all good news for you, incidentally. I mean, I don't want to step on the good news. It's all good news because the trust that mom did is now treated as if the trust paid, as if you guys paid fair market value for the property on mom's date of death. Are you with me on this?
Yeah.
So if the property,
Yeah.
well, what's it worth? What's the property worth right now, do you think? What would you sell it for?
All total, it's going to be right around 400,000.
Okay. So if you paid 400,000 for this property and you sold it for 400,000, how much profit do you have?
That would be zero.
And what's the tax on zero?
0 times 0 is always 0.
Bingo. There you are. Zero tax. Are you with me on this?
Okay.
Did I tell you this was good news?
Oh yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, you were thinking right.
There wouldn't be any capital gains.
Right. No capital gains, no tax at all. Right. That's correct. And that's true too. Go ahead.
No, I had another question, but now it just escaped me.
Well, hang on, because we're at the end of this segment, but hang on through and think about your question was, because I got some good advice for you as well on how to sell the house. There's something that people do all the time. It's disaster. I don't want you to do it. I want you to lock in the gains. Mom did it right. You're going to get the benefit. Good. You got to trust. Wonderful. Let's continue with that. And when we get back, I'll tell you what I'm talking about there. You've been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Welcome back to the David Carrier Show. I'm still David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Hard luck for you, I know. You can call us at 616-774-2424. That's area code 616-774-2424. Mike's mom recently died. He has 3 siblings, so there's four kids altogether. Mom had property in trust, and the question is, now that the property is worth total of $400,000, how much, it's property plus a couple of vacant lots, how much capital gain tax will we have to pay on the increase in value on those properties since mom bought them until she died? The good news is, as Mike, I think Mike already knew when he called in, he just wanted confirmation. The good news is the answer is 0, because Mike's mom's trust is treated as if it paid fair market value on mom's date of death. And so if mom just recently passed, well, real estate values don't go up and down that quickly. And there's a thing called the alternative valuation date, which is 180 days from the date of the of mom's death. And you could use that if the property is substantially increased in value. But bottom line, if you sell it fairly promptly after mom passes, you're going to be treated, the trust will be treated as if it paid fair market value. You sell it for fair market value, 0 profit, 0 tax. Mike, have I summed that up accurately there?
Yes, except possibly one thing.
Okay.
Mom passed about a year ago, and where the property was at used to be rural, and now it's residential. She lived in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and Wyoming is just booming right now. So the home values have just skyrocketed.
Okay.
There.
So you're definitely going to want.
We will probably. Go ahead.
No, so you're definitely going to want to use the alternative valuation date. It's mom's date of death or 180 days later, right? So at least you get another half a year. No, I get that. But I'm guessing that there was some appreciation in the 6 months after she died, right? So you go out, you get yourself an appraisal, not just as of her date of death, but as of 180 days later. So if the property values were still skyrocketing, right, then at least you get that much.
Okay.
You know, I mean, every little bit helps.
Oh yeah.
You know, and then you just need to get an appraisal on those dates, and just look at what the comps are. So maybe there is some more. You know, the alternative valuation date is something that we usually use when it has to do with stocks. You know, because the stock market goes up and down so rapidly. Real estate, not quite so much. So you know, you it doesn't. In real estate, you don't typically use the alternative valuation date, but given the local market situation that you're talking about, you might very well. So that's all. Yeah. That's the good news. What other question did you remember? What the second question was?
Yeah, it has to do with property tax at the time of sale, and that will probably be, I'm guessing, done at closing.
That's typically correct. And they typically screw it up.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I believe all the real estate taxes have been paid.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when the due dates are or when they go into effect, but if all the real estate taxes have been paid, there should be a refund at closing for what has already been paid. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, that whole tax proration thing, one of the things that we always do when folks are selling property, we don't charge for it, is just to review the documentation. You know, if you have a trust with us, we'll review the documentation for you. And one of the things where you find a lot of mistakes, just put it that way, or inaccuracies, whatever you want to say, is in the calculation of the property tax when they're prorating it. So you may get a refund. How much of a refund do you get? Again, that's going to be, somebody should be checking. I'm just suggesting, we love our title agents and all, but you really need to double check the calculation on the annual property tax. I'm not saying they get it wrong all the time, but that's where you find most errors, frankly. Is in that price. And it's a few hundred. It can be a few $100s. You know, I mean, if you dropped $100 on the sidewalk, you'd bend over and pick it up, wouldn't you? Well, you need to. Yeah. So you just need to double check and make sure that's done correctly. But that is
probably should go.
Go ahead.
It's going through a realtor right now, so that should be taken care of at closing.
Oh, no. It'll get taken care of at closing. That's for sure. The question is, will it be done accurately? Now, half the time they make the mistake, half the time it favors the buyer, half the time it favors the seller. And whether or not we make us think about it depends if we're buying or selling. If it's like Monopoly, right? Bank makes error in your favor. Okay. Hooray. I'll keep my mouth shut. But if they stick us, if they work the proration wrong and they're sticking us with more than we ought to pay, we're going to make us think about that. I guarantee you. Okay.
Right.
Now here's the thing that you don't want to do that makes you weep when you see people doing this. And that is the property's in a trust right now. Okay. That's good for a lot of reasons. One of which is one of you four is the trustee. Is that you, or is that a brother or sister who's the trustee?
One of my sisters is the trustee because she still lives out west there.
Perfect.
I'm right in Grand Rapids.
Yeah. What you don't want is 4 cooks in the kitchen. Okay. You don't want, what happens a lot is the trust will deed the property out to the kids. Well, when the property gets deeded out to the kids, now I've got to get all of you to agree on what the price ought to be, the terms and conditions. All nightmare. That's a nightmare scenario where your sister's not going to rip you off. Trust her. Let her just, that way I've got one person to sign off. One person checks everything. Here's your money. Wonderful. And we don't get into a big mishigas and your spouses get involved and all. You don't want that. So that's number one. It's easier to administer with the trust. The second thing is you're not selling the property. So the person who gets the property, right? Now it's never rained in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Guess what? It starts raining and now you got a leaky basement. Now they sue you. I'd much rather have them suing mom's trust instead of Mike. You get it? See, right. If you're selling the property, they're suing Mike and his siblings. Whereas if it's sold out of the trust, now they're suing the trust. And that's what it just gives you, that one more layer of protection, that much harder to come after you. So good that you've got a trust. You'll get the tax benefits. There's no question about that. Be sure that whoever you're talking to, your tax advisor, is aware of and discusses with you the alternative valuation date, the 180 days after mom's date of death, in order to, get as much of that appreciation tax-free as possible, right? And then by using the trust, you got sister is in charge. Yeah, she's in charge, but she's not out to, she's not evil unless she is. And you get that protection. That's so important, I think. Okay.
Okay.
Thank.
That was just a question that came up from one of my other siblings.
Well, I tell you what, hang on. The music means I got to get out. Hang on through the news and we'll get that other sibling question handled. Okay? But that's when we'll do it. You're listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Welcome back to the David Carrier Show. I'm still David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. And you can still call us at 616-774-2424. That's 616-774-2424. We'll get your question, comment, or concern on the air. 616-774-2424. Now, if you want to email me, that's easy to do as well. David@davidcarrierlaw.com. We've been talking with Mike. Mike's mom died about a year ago. The property is located out in Cheyenne, Wyoming, which I had no idea was a booming metropolis. And apparently the prices have been skyrocketing. And then, so usually, you value the property as the date of death, and now you don't have to pay any tax. But the suggestion is that on mom's date of death to now, the price has gone up significantly. Well, you can capture or protect about half of that gain because there's what's called the alternative valuation date, which is 180 days from the date of death. So when you're figuring stepped up basis, you can use either the date of death or, as I said, the alternative valuation date. Also, it's in a trust, so we're recommending that, assuming that sister is good-hearted and good faith and everything else, even if she isn't, that we let her do her thing, right, as the trustee. and strongly advise against deeding the property out to the 4 kids, because you got 4 kids, and then you got 4 spouses, or at least some number of spouses. And now we've got 8 cooks in the kitchen, and that is disaster. You don't want that. Plus, when you deed the property out, you're giving up the barrier between you and the buyer. See, if the buyer's unhappy and you sold it to them, right, then they figure out, okay, I'll sue them all. Great. Like, that's what you need, a lawsuit in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Let sister, who's the trustee, deal with it. Let the trust deal with it. It's an element of protection that mom did for you. Why would you throw it away? Okay. Now, what I understand is that one of Mike's siblings also has a question. So there's the wind up. Time for the pitch, Mike.
No, that answered the question. The question was about capital gains when it sells.
Okay. I thought one of your siblings had a question too. I thought you'd said that at the end.
That was her question. I'm just calling for her because that question was posed to, my other 3 siblings.
Sure.
About it. And the only answer we got from the trustee was, you'll have to talk to your tax preparer. And I kind of went, nah, that don't sound right.
No. And you don't want what you don't. So you'll get a 1099 out of the sale here, right? That shows your portion of the
right.
K1 that'll show you your portion of the proceeds. But it's the trustee's job to make sure that everybody's reporting this consistently. You don't want there to be audits and then you each came up with a different value. Are you kidding me? Jeepers. You don't want that. No, you need to get the trust to give you an appraisal, the highest you can get, obviously, consistent with being a certified appraisal. But that's what you want. Make sure it's accurate, but you're not looking to see. One of the things that people will do, like in Michigan, well, everywhere, is you look at what you look at what the local taxing authority says the property is worth. So in Michigan, that's the state equalized value times 2 is supposed to be the actual cash value of the property. That's in the Constitution, Michigan Constitution. Well, that's not true. Everybody knows that. The actual, what are you talking about? How can you do an appraisal? God knows whenever you did the appraisal and you didn't do a real appraisal, you did a property tax assessment. Would you sell your house for 2 times the SEV? It's going to be low, it's going to be high, but it's not going to be correct, you see? And sometimes people go with that. Now, maybe that's to your advantage. I mean, if you're selling it for at or less than the assessed value, well, that's a very inexpensive way of figuring out what the value is. But that's not what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing you say is, hey, the values of these things are, floating up like balloons with lots of helium in them. And I'd rather not pay any more tax than I have to. Well, now you're going to have to get an appraisal on the thing. Sister should get the appraisal. It should be an element of the trust administration. Now, here's one more twist for you. One more, possibly this is what's going on. Your capital gain tax rate depends on the amount of income you have. So if your sister doesn't have all that much income, or she's retired on Social Security, her capital gain tax rate may very well be zero. So she doesn't care whether or not, she may not care. This is my suggestion. She may not care what the gain is, because on long-term capital gains, this is why you held on to it for a year after mom's date of death, I suspect. Her tax rate is going to be zero anyway. So she doesn't care. Maybe that's what's going on. I mean, I'm trying to figure out why she would slough this off on you or on the other beneficiaries. And that might be a reason you've seen that happen. I'm not going to pay a tax anyway.
Yeah. Well, the reason nothing is sold is because she had so much personal stuff there that we're trying to get cleared out.
Gotcha.
Cars, yard equipment, some antique furniture that she purchased. That's all what's pending right now on selling it.
Got it. Yeah. Well, but that's my suggestion. It's possible that the reason sister's not going for the appraisal to get the maximum stepped up basis might be because she doesn't have a dog in the fight, because her tax rate's going to be zero anyway. That's just you have four siblings, 100,000 each. They don't look at the capital gains when they're figuring the capital gain tax rate. They look at your other income. You see, so just a thought. I don't, you'd have to, but the determination of the basis, that's something the trustee should do. That's definitely a trustee responsibility, getting the thing appraised and everything else. Because you have no authority. You have no way to get it appraised.
Right.
So that's something.
Okay.
That's something that should be on her.
Yeah. Okay.
All righty.
Give me direction on what's going the next time the four of us talk.
You betcha. Take care now. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for calling.
All right.
in.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye. There's lots of things. There's lots of things you can do. And some of the things, like here, I'm suggesting, don't distribute the property to the kids and have them sell it. I mean, one of the things that happens frequently in probate, well, it happens in probate, I don't know, frequently. Anyway, it happens where the judge gets tired. Oh, we've got Joe on GR line 2. How we doing? Hey, Joe.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, so
I tell you what, if you can give me the lay of the land in a minute and a half, the music's going to start, and we'll get back to it in the last segment, okay? But just tell me what's going on so I can call somebody and call my lifeline and find out.
I got a few properties I want to build some vacation rentals on.
Okay.
And I'm wondering how to best, as I get older here and pass, wondering the best way to transfer those by inheritance to my son.
Got it. Well, there's some things you need to do. That's for sure. And we'll cover that. Have you bought these properties outright? Did you inherit them? How'd you get them, if I could ask?
Yeah. So I bought the properties outright, just the land, and they're empty properties right now.
Got it. Lakefront or?
And what's that?
Are they lakefront?
No, near. One's near the lake. The others are just general properties, lots up north.
Nice. Okay.
And then I currently do have a trust right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering if if it's a good enough way to do it. Okay.
All right. We'll knock that out when we get back. Okay. That music means I need to
thank you.
Let them sell some ads, but I'll be right back. You've been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Welcome back to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. And this is the place, of course, where we talk about estate planning, elder law, real estate, and business law. So Joe's served up a hot and sizzling one. It's a really great question. I love it. He's got a number of building lots. And the idea is, what if I put vacation properties, these are all up north. What if I put vacation properties on these lots? And then I want to leave them to my kids. And okay, great. So how do we go about doing that? The answer is, trusts. Okay. The answer is, we've got to look at what are the threats to you, to your family going forward. My thought is always, first and foremost, is long-term care protection. So how do I make sure that, in the years to come, if Joe or Joe's spouse needs long-term care, how do I make sure that the rental properties he's built up don't go flying over to the government? How do we do that? Okay, that's a good question. That's a good start. Then, how do we make sure that if the tenants are unhappy because it rained during their vacation and now they want to sue Joe for doing that rain dance outside the house or whatever, how do we make sure that Joe is protected? Then, how do we make sure that it gets to the kids so that if when the kids are going through a divorce or a bankruptcy or something, the kids still get the value of the property. And as we talked about in the last, with our last caller, how do we make sure that the kids get the full stepped up basis? So here's how you do it. We're going to take the, Joe, are you going to self-finance the building? Are you going to build them yourself? Or are you going to self-finance or?
Yeah, probably finance some of it. And my idea was that they will pay for my long-term care insurance.
Yeah, you can't buy enough long-term care insurance. So here,
no, I know. So
here's
I'm
what you're
not
gonna do.
All right.
Here's what you're gonna do, dude. I don't know if you listen to me, do what you want. But I would throw those things into we call it the root cellar trust, and it wouldn't have your house in it. It wouldn't have your other savings in it. It'd be isolated for these properties. And you don't have to do the limited liability company on these properties until you're ready to rent them, but you're going to be doing that down the line as well. But first things first, we move the properties into the root cellar trust so that 5 years after we put them in the root cellar trust, Medicaid, long-term care doesn't care that you ever had them. Now they're off the table. Also, with this new auto insurance law, if you have the misfortune to bump a motorcyclist or get bumped by one, now you're on the hook for that, right? I don't want them taking these cottages, right? Because you didn't spend the extra $100 to get the maximum insurance. All right. And the other guy has no insurance anyway. So by putting them in the root cellar trust, we are protecting them against lawsuits. At least we're going in that direction. And we're definitely protecting them against the long-term care. Now you've built, so that's first things first. All right. It's off the table. The assets are off the table for lawsuits. They're off the table for long-term care. The next thing, you've built the house, you're ready to rent it. That's great. Each individual property has its own LLC. It has its own limited liability company. And that's what you want to do. Now, they're all under common control, so you shouldn't have to, you may have to work with the assessor to make sure, but you shouldn't have to increase, you shouldn't have to uncap the properties, but they're going to be, you're building them now, so it's not going to be that big a deal. But you want to make sure that each separate property is in its own separate LLC. Again, if you've had these for a long time, so they may want to uncap the property taxes, stuff like, you're not going to have that issue because you're building them. But for people who've had them for a while, when you put them in the LLC, your assessor will want, but there's a common control exception to the uncapping. We would do that. Now, you've got a trust where now they cannot, if you get into a bankruptcy or a car accident or what have you, these assets are now protected. And they're each in a limited liability company. Each one of the properties is in an LLC, so that if somebody does a slip and fall on the first property, they're not coming after the other ones to pay for it. Okay, that's the value of the LLC. Now, we take it a step further than that. What we're going to do, what I'm going to suggest, you've got your ownership LLCs. These are the ones that own the 3 or 4 rental properties, okay? And they're protected. So if you get in a car accident, whatever, they're not coming after these properties. That's number one. Number two, if you or your spouse were to need long-term care, these assets don't count for that either. Good. But what if the tenant wants to sue you? And you say, well, I've got it in an LLC. They can't get my other stuff. Yeah, I know they can't get your other stuff, but they could get that cottage, couldn't they? Yeah, they could. So here's what we're going to do instead. What we're going to do is we're going to rent. You've got the LLCs, 3 LLCs with A, B, and C cottages in them. What you're going to do is you're going to rent, not lease, rent those to a rental. I call it the rental agent LLC. So when somebody's staying at the cottage, they're not renting the cottage directly. They're subletting the cottage from an intermediary. Are you with me on this? See what I'm saying, Joe?
Yeah, pretty much. Would that be the same as if I had a management company running them?
No, because the management company is providing services. You need to set this up on an ownership basis so that the rental agent LLC is the one employing the property management company. So when they go to sue, all they've got is the sublessor, right? All they've got is somebody who's renting the property from you. They don't have the property. Are you with me on this?
Yeah, yes.
See? And now they can't get all of your properties. They can't get any of your properties because the person they rented from did not own them. The person that they have their rental vacation agreement with, okay, is, and you've got your property management company as the agent, which I think is a very smart thing to do. You don't want to be hassling with that. Let them do that, right? But if they sue, right, and they say, oh, you know, the stairs were all wrong, I'm going to sue the person I rented from. Okay, well, the person you rented from doesn't own the stairs. There's no assets there.
Right.
You see? And you've got your insurance, and of course you're going to have your insurance and everything else. Yes. But let's put that additional layer of protection in so that even if the worst comes to worst, they still get an empty sack. They don't get your cottage. They don't get your house. They don't get your life savings. That's all isolated. That's all protected. Okay? So that's what you want. And then when it goes to the kids, there's the music. But when it goes to the kids get it in trust, and you perpetuate the goodness. That's how we do it. Okay, Joe?
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. You've been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney.